Hello, it's Friday, May 8th. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of What's Happening in Myanmar, a show from the Frontier Myanmar podcast family. I'm your host, Nick Dunlop. The reports of Aung San Suu Kyi being moved to house arrest have been met with deep scepticism. On the battlefield, the military continued to press its advantage, recapturing key territory. International efforts to hold the junta accountable gained momentum, while the ASEAN summit in the Philippines grapple with the ongoing crisis in Myanmar. On Thursday last week, the junta announced it had moved imprisoned state councillor Aung San Suu Kyi from prison to a designated residence in Naypyidaw. The regime mouthpiece, the Global New Light of Myanmar, framed the move as a humanitarian gesture, part of an amnesty for the full moon day of Kason on April the 30th. However, the National League for Democracy, which Aung San Suu Kyi led before her arrest, immediately dismissed the move as a calculated political deception. In a statement, the NLD's Central Working Committee said it does not signify a genuine path toward reconciliation and urged the UN and other countries to exercise extreme caution in engaging with the regime. Sources told the Irrawaddy that the 80-year-old was actually moved on April the 16th to a hastily built house in a military compound where she reportedly complained about the smell of fresh paint. This is the same location where Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with her on April the 25th, making him the only second diplomat to see her since the 2021 coup. Her son, Kim Aris, called her a hostage, demanding credible and independently verified proof of life from an international body like the Red Cross. While Thailand called the move a sign of progress, the United States demanded her immediate and unconditional release. During the Kason amnesty, Aung San Suu Kyi's sentence was reduced by another 1/6 after a similar reduction during the New Year amnesty, leaving her with 18 years and 9 months remaining. Meanwhile, the regime has been making significant military gains on the ground. The junta announced it had recaptured the town of Indore in Sagaing region from the Kachin Independence Army and Allied People's Defence Forces on April the 30th. A resident told Myanmar Now that resistance forces were forced to withdraw due to severe shortages of arms and ammunition, a problem plaguing anti-junta groups since the Chinese pressure cut off their supply lines last year. This loss came just days after the regime retook Chin State's Phalam town on April the 28th. On May 6th, the military also secured a major strategic victory by regaining control of the highway linking Mandalay with the Kachin State capital of Machina. This allows the junta to send supplies and reinforcements to its vital northern command. In Chin State, troops also recaptured the strategically important Kennedy Peak outpost in May of this year. These advances underscore the regime's regained momentum, bolstered by using conscripts, advanced drones from China, and a more flexible command structure. As the regime gains ground, the newly formed Chin People's Army said it is prepared to defend the towns under its control in southern Chin State. On the international front, the regime is making moves to improve its image. Bloomberg reported that the junta has hired Roger Stone, a longtime ally of the United States President Donald Trump, as a political lobbyist. Stone, who will be paid $50,000 a month through the DCI group, has been tasked with rebuilding relations with the US, focusing on trade and humanitarian relief. This is on top of a $3 million contract the DCI group signed with the regime last year. At the same time, efforts to hold the junta accountable for alleged war crimes are moving forward. The Chin Human Rights Organization announced that a complaint against Min Aung Hlaing and the regime has been formally submitted for judicial review in Timor-Leste. The case, filed under universal jurisdiction, centers on the alleged abduction and murder of 10 civilians in Chin State in 2022. This follows a similar case filed in Indonesia in November 2022, accusing the junta chief of genocide against the Rohingya. After more than 10 years of award-winning journalism, we at Frontier are fighting for our survival. The grants that once supported 2/3 of our operations are no longer available. Despite this, our journalists continue their difficult and dangerous work, but with decreasing resources. Please encourage friends and colleagues to join Frontier so that we can continue producing our trademark features, in-depth investigations, and on-the-ground reporting. By joining Frontier, you'll be supporting us to tell the stories that matter and to cut through the noise and reveal what's really happening in Myanmar. Please click the link in the podcast show notes to join us. Thank you. The ASEAN summit kicked off this week in Cebu, Philippines, with Myanmar's civil war high on the agenda. The junta's leader, Min Aung Hlaing, was barred from attending, with the regime sending its foreign ministry permanent secretary instead. The Philippines, the current ASEAN chair, stated that the bloc has not reached a consensus on recognizing the regime's recent election, and that the 5-point consensus remains a framework for dealing with the crisis. Manila called on the regime to grant its Foreign Affairs Secretary brief access to Aung San Suu Kyi to build international confidence. Meanwhile, Kim Aris met with France's Foreign Minister to personally request help in obtaining proof of his mother's well-being, urging Paris to join his call for her fundamental rights to be guaranteed. The summit concludes on Saturday with the world watching to see if ASEAN can forge a united path forward. And that's the latest from Myanmar for this week. I'll be back next week to bring you a roundup of the stories making the headlines on Friday, May 15th.